Yeah, so you were on a roll, and then the roll stopped. So I guess we could kind of pick it up, sort of just the quick intro again, and then if you want to kind of, I know we had one or two other people jump in. So
Sure.
if you want to just kind of reshare where you were, then I think that we can go.
I don't remember at what point it is we got cut off. So I'll just say Luis Martinez, Director for Innovation and Entrepreneurship at Trinity University. This is a one in a century event that will impact an entire generation.
Awesome. And so I know that, as a professor, as somebody that's really active within our local entrepreneurship scene, whether it be on the tech sphere or the non-tech sphere, this has been disruptive. And so the university has adapted, and that, education has gone online. I mean, our Breakfast and Launch program has gone online, but how effective have any of those tools been? Or do you think it's really sort of a level of, I hope it works for you, and we'll see at the very end of this, what are your thoughts about, all of the remote presence? Do you think that it's something we can stick with after the fact, or?
Well, I'll look at this at a couple of levels. The first is, without any question, what this moment has sort of shown light on is the need for people to be able to sort of work and collaborate remotely. And whether that's, distance learning or whether it's collaboration or working over Zoom. There was already some of that was happening sort of in the before time. But now that people are sort of been 6 weeks, 1 month into working remotely, it's really clear that this is going to be part of people's sort of cadence and workflow. So to that extent, I think that people are getting better at these kind of Zoom calls. They're being much more forgiving, obviously, when people drop in and drop off of calls. And so I think that's going to be something that's going to be permanently lasting. The other aspect I think that's going to be really important on the positive end is that, believe it or not, the world is a lot smaller now than it was prior to this event. The ability to Zoom or connect with people through FaceTime, whether they literally are down the block or across town or on the other side of the world, is much more easier and facilitated now. And so in many ways, being able to reach out more globally beyond sort of your local network to actually get on a call with someone in Los Angeles, or getting on a call with someone in Spain, is something that's doable. So we're finding these kinds of things that are true. Now, with regards to sort of the impact of this rush to sort of remote distance work, I think the scorecard's pretty mixed. I think some folks have done a really phenomenal job. They were already sort of geared up to do distance education, distance learning. They were already working from home, so that transition actually was pretty seamless. And then there were other programs or initiatives that people had that it was just sort of triage to get something up and running. And now people are beginning to sort of like specialize in getting that sort of higher or done better. I do know at the university side, we're having the sort of the whole range of experiences with our students and our faculty. For the most part, instruction is taking place. Students are learning. Things are assignments are being turned in, but that rush of taking something that wasn't designed to be in this format and then trying to do that transition, like I said, some people are being much more successful and better at it, and others because like you've had experience in doing this kind of work, so doing that transition, or you've had that planning time to make that happen is true. So something I think that's important for folks on the call and for people who might tune in later. Is the importance for contingency planning in your organizations to be able to be prepared for these kinds of disasters. What happens when you're not able to come into the office? What happens when that key supplier is someone that's sort of turned down? Is something that's going to be important for people's planning moving forward. Yeah,
and so I know that you're putting together the summer accelerator still, and the Stumberg competition has gone on, even though it hasn't happened live, if you will. But how are you expecting all of that to work out? Are there lessons within that program that you feel are sort of non-transferable without being in person? How much acceleration can a company do, not just through Stumberg, but really when there isn't that personal touch to it? Is it that much more difficult?
So I'm an optimist. So we're committed to startup formation. We're committed to new venture formation. And we believe firmly that every time, the answer to the question, when is the best time to start a business, that the best answer to that question is always now, right? So because of that commitment and that mindset, we felt it was very strong for us to continue to move forward with our venture competition, to continue to have and work with these students to launch their businesses right now in the middle of this pandemic, right now in the middle of a global recession. And for the following reasons. One, these businesses are going to be resilient, and the founding teams that are part of, not only our founding teams that are starting in this program, but those that are tuning in right now that are in their business, the lessons that you're learning in sort of making your business lean and enabling your business to survive, in re-examining every assumption it is that you have about your business, those lessons are going to be lasting. And so to answer your question, like we're doubling down, like we believe so strongly that the kinds of lessons that you learn in starting a business during the hard times are so critically important that's why we think it's important for our students to do this. So back to this question about how can you do this remotely? It's not going to be easy, but the kind of skills that you learn on how to keep your team together, even though your team may not all be working sort of in the same place, the kind of skills that you're going to have to sort of hone in on in many ways, over communicating or being very, very clear on progress, or being very, very clear on exactly what are sort of the achievable objectives that you've got to move forward, are going to be really important lessons for us. So we are hopeful that our 6 student teams that are in our program are going to be able to meet the kind of milestones that we've had set for them every year. They're going to form real businesses. They'll make real traction with regards to their business models. They're going to make real progress with regards to their product or service offerings. And they're really going to be digging really, really deep about what's it like to sort of start a business. What's a reality is that not all businesses are successful. And even those companies that start in an accelerator program don't eventually turn out to be successful companies moving forward. What we have a lot of confidence in our program is that our Stumberg program historically has given our teams 24 months of real runway. We've had our student teams be able to sort of run and operate their businesses for 24 months, 36 months, before we begin to see sort of that cliff of people sort of falling off. And so to be able to give our students, let's say it's 12 months of runway instead of 24 months of runway because of the way the world has changed, to be able to sort of dig in really, really deep in building their businesses at the time, I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic that those startups, those ventures, those nonprofits that are critically thinking through every assumption about their business, critically thinking about every assumption about who their customers are, really engaging very deeply with their customers. I mean, this series has been fantastic to hear over and over and over again, people talking about engage with your customers, talk with your customers, show your appreciation to them, serve them the best that you can. That's something that's true always, but particularly in times and crises like these, it's even more important. So those kinds of skills for these students that are coming through, even if they come off and become founders of their own companies, they're going to be able to sort of last in their firms. But if they, for whatever reasons, turns out that they're not going to be moving forward with their companies as these founders, they're going to be incredible employees because they're going to know what it's going to be like to be resourceful, to persevere, to be able to be nimble and pivot in these kinds of times. So we're optimistic for our program this year.
Well, that's exciting. I'm super excited about Revive Snacks.
Yeah,
because selfishly they're also in our program, the Break Fast and Launch Show. But kind of going towards that resiliency, innovation, one of the things that's kind of shined a light, if you will, is that there are a number of products that may have had a market in good times, but when you can't go to the store, or when you can't explore and find a new thing, or you're not able to traverse the pop-ups or the Fiesta and see a new brand, you may be irrelevant as a company. So right. What do you do if you find out that your company, your product, your service is no longer really that essential? How do you pivot from that, knowing that I'm a food truck and now I can't I can't sell my food in the same way. Or, you know, I'm a high-end luxury product and people aren't looking for me right now. So, you know,
it's really hard. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. That's very, very difficult. That's really, really hard. It's a question many founders are asking themselves right now. It's a question founding teams are trying to dig in deep to sort of understand. I'll provide, you know, from the outside, a couple of sort of key points. The first is it's really clear that online is even more important now more than ever. The ability to have a strong online presence, the ability to actually to draw viewers, engagement, clicks, likes, whatever metric it is that's important to sort of judge whether or not you're doing well or not doing well on social media is really critical. And that's not only sort of your online presence, having a landing page and having people find you online. That's actually sort of a real sort of e-commerce platform, being able to sell your product online directly. That's critically important. And understanding the logistics component of getting your product to its ultimate consumer are going to be really important. So that's the first thing. This is an opportunity for those companies to re-examine what's happening on their digital footprint. The second thing that I'm seeing is those companies, and many of them have been through 2008 and 2009, so it's very interesting to see them pivot very, very quickly. Can you pivot very quickly to the new reality? So if it turns out that the only thing available for you is curbside delivery, like, is that something that you can manage to do with the hard, difficult, the choices that you have to make? Is there something that you can do to ensure that your food gets out there, that your product gets out there? Maybe you're pivoting to first responders. Maybe you're pivoting to hospital workers. Maybe you're pivoting to, you know, folks who are working in the San Antonio Food Bank. You know, folks who are out there every day. Police, fire, you know, are they a potential channel that you can look to sort of engage with your product to get a sort of sense about real traction about what's going on? The third thing that's really clear is that while, you know, there have been drastic cuts of spending across the board for businesses, for consumers, for government, things are going to be coming back. The question is when. Right. So do you have the resilience as a business model to figure out, like, what can you do in the interim until things get back? Can you put things in place to sort of really improve your product, your servings, your servicing, your team, your infrastructure, to ensure that when things come back in an intermediate way, you're able to take advantage of that moment? And so these are maybe three things that can help sort of guide folks sort of moving forward. But unfortunately for many of them, they're stopping in their tracks. This is a very hard time. If you're at that stage when you're just starting off and it's not clear, I know that for some folks, it's really easy to say, well, we'll just put the brakes on it and we'll revisit this in 2022, or we'll put the brakes on it and we'll revisit it when things are better. And while I understand that sentiment, maybe this is an opportunity to pursue a fantastic collaboration, a fantastic partnership. Maybe this is the opportunity to reach out to people's networks, to find unconventional ways of working together or moving things forward in ways that may not have seemed possible previously. Or perhaps there's opportunities to do things remotely where you're creating real value locally, but that it involves collaborations somewhere else. And so that might be an opportunity to sort of dig in deep for sort of unique kinds of partnerships or unique kinds of blended product service that could be an interesting sort of new model. And then the last thing is the importance for people to take care of themselves. This is an enormously stressful time. Families are stressed, individuals are stressed, companies are stressed, institutions are stressed, kids are stressed out. People taking time to be good to themselves, to get out, to exercise, to find ways of relieving that anxiety and relieving that stress are going to be important as well.
Yeah, I think that's key, right? I mean, even if you were an introvert, you know, it's still you still miss kind of getting out at some levels, right? So, speaking to, I thought it was really interesting you brought up partnerships, because if you see it in the food scene, bars, at least locally, if you're strictly a bar, you're unable to provide service. But if you're a bar with food, you can provide both scenarios. So we've seen some food trucks partner with bars that were strictly bars to provide that sort of tango, if you will. And then unique service offerings. But it's becoming, I guess, more interesting to see how people target their market. I feel in the past you've talked through sort of the lean canvas model. You've talked through sort of the different motives and motivations that consumers have. And one that really stands out to me is that this crisis has sort of taken away the item of convenience in terms of location, because that's, in some sense, it's no longer a factor. It's not like you're driving home from work and, oh, it's just the closest thing, right?
Right.
So, or maybe your market was somebody that traditionally wasn't on the internet, maybe somebody that didn't have access to internet to begin with. So if you can't communicate with your market, is it a matter of getting innovative about it, or is it a matter of waiting? Or, I mean, how do you cost benefit, being open versus waiting it out versus closing down? Is there a way to do that?
Well, some founders and ventures just don't have the luxury. You've got a bill being due, you've got revenue that has to come in. It's either survive or die. And so I find it really sort of exciting how some of these companies have been able to sort of pivot. There are restaurants that are now in the food delivery business for staples. And so they're delivering dozens of eggs, and they're delivering flour, and they're delivering yeast because there's a baking spree going on. Or people want to start gardening. And so, we're including plants as part of what we're offering, or toilet paper. So I think, for those companies that are able to sort of pivot to serve new customers or other customers in different ways or novel ways, sometimes you've got to do what you need to do to survive. And if it means you're going to be delivering eggs and milk in addition to this really fantastic lunch, and providing your customers the opportunity to tap into your kinds of sort of supply chain, that could be something that could be incredibly advantageous for that business, not only now, but also moving forward. So I think that's important. For those companies that do have the opportunity to sort of hit the pause button or re-examine, this is not the time to take your attention off your business. This is, in fact, the most important time to really be digging deep into what your assumptions really are about your business, about who your customer are, and to find other novel ways of re-engaging with them. Sometimes it's as simple as picking up the phone and actually physically calling them. Sometimes it's an email, sometimes it's a video, but finding ways in which you can engage with your customers. Or even if you can, once we're beginning to see some level of sort of activity taking place with social distancing, being able to engage with folks 6 feet apart, 10 feet apart, that's going to be critically important as well, because there will be no business that's left untouched by this crisis. And so now's the time to really dig in deep to understand what this fundamentally means for the assumptions that people had about their business. Here's what's true. Whatever your business model and your business plan was March 1st or February 1st, 2020, throw it away. It was wonderful for the before time. At some point, maybe in 2023, you'll be able to get back to that kind of level. But for right now, you are starting on a fresh new page. You're starting from scratch. It's important to sort of realize that and start from that sort of day zero perspective.
That makes a lot of sense. I think hopefully a lot of people have done that.
Yeah.
That would be the, if you haven't done that, yes, thanks for reemphasizing that, because it's, life is not going to be the same, at least until maybe next year. Hopefully it'll get somewhat closer, right? But
and this isn't easy. I don't want to sit here and say that this is going to be an easy academic exercise or an easy tabletop exercise. There are real hard choices that have been made, that are being made in people's businesses about how they want to sort of move forward. and just understand that you're part of a community. You're a group, you're surrounded by a group of people that are working really hard to make this happen.
Yeah, and so, thinking about getting to that reopen point, because I know that it's at least scheduled to come sooner than later. Uh, what do you think are going to be the necessary consi- considerations to have a quality environment for people to actually open and subsist, rather than open and lose based on their overhead? I mean, I know that some malls are thinking of doing curbside to go for clothing. I don't know how viable that is if I can't see or try the clothing, but um, knowing that maybe we'll still have the 6 foot distancing for a while, or something. Um, what kind of considerations do you think are really key for a good environment?
Well, well, the first is health. The first is for the ability to feel confident, for the ability for people to feel confident that they're healthy, that the people they're engaging with are healthy, that the chances of infection, or the chances of them falling ill or loved ones falling ill, is relatively small. So once we begin to see some effective treatments come online, which I'm positive will come out within the next 6 months, when a vaccine is in place in the year to 18 months, that's really when people are going to be able to sort of get back to some level of normal. So if you ask yourself, all right, I'm looking at a time period of 6 months, or I'm looking at a time period of the next year when things might be kind of staged, it's important to critically ask yourself, well, what can we physically do, or what can we actually really do, and to be creative about it. Yes, it might mean sort of trying out what curbside delivery looks like for various kinds of products that currently are done that way. Or it may mean engaging with these other kinds of delivery services, or starting a separate delivery service, similar to what we see with Instacart and Shipt, where people are engaging in some sort of personal shopper model that may be an effective way of moving their business forward in this interim. The importance is going to be engagement. You need to let people know that you exist. You need to let people know that you're still there. You need to let people know that you're still up and running, that your product and service still exists. And so now the question is, like, what does that next 6 months look like? It might mean focusing on a really hyper niche opportunity for the next 6 months and just hitting it out of the park and serving those folks, right? So forgive me, I'm outside. You may hear, a leaf blower in the background. There are people that are out there working, right? So how is it that you can serve that market niche, right? Like, what are their immediate needs that you can have to go ahead and serve those businesses and those consumers that are in the workplace right now, or those that are working remotely? That's going to be sort of critical to think about. So my suggestion would be, think about it in stages. What is it that you want to be able to do, or physically be able to do, in the next 3 to 6 months? What will you be doing in the next 9 to sort of 12? And then what are you looking at that 12 to 18 time period?
Awesome. So, knowing that you're sort of at this crux of innovation, I'd really love to hear your thoughts on what is this whole crisis maybe stifled in terms of innovation, like something that we thought was going to be a big thing, which is completely maybe irrelevant now. And then what gaps have you seen in terms of someone should really focus on this. I'm not asking for the next $1 million idea, but really, where have you seen the breaks or the gaps?
So the breaks and the gaps are really clear. There is a hunger for people to connect. We're social beings. We want to connect with each other. We want to actually physically be in each other's presence. So those kinds of businesses that are able to connect people are going to be critically important. Video, pictures are important, but how is it that you can physically sort of express that sort of connection to people moving forward is going to be important. The second thing is really clear, is sort of being able to serve that gap of people that are blending sort of their living, working environment. So how is it that you can make their lives, our lives, better in that kind of blended moment are going to be critically important. The third is sort of international. Those companies and those organizations that already have footprints internationally that have strong relationships that can sort of begin as other parts of the world are beginning to sort of like move forward and kick up. The ability to sort of like engage those teams internationally and bring them closer together through these kinds of technologies are going to be really important. The fourth thing is sort of this drive to hyper-local. It's important to have local manufacturing. It's important to have local supply chains. It's important to have sort of local sourcing for various kinds of products and services. This crisis is sort of seeing that. So I see opportunities for many things to happen much more locally that perhaps were vastly distributed, and being able to sell sort of that value proposition, not so much on the cost side, but on the reliability side. Right, the fact that we've got a reliable sort of supply chain to be able to ensure that that product or service continues to happen when these crises occur. Other gaps that I see, or places where I see the opportunity for innovation, is it's really clear that online presence and online delivery and online sales are a critical part of people's business infrastructure. Those people who've got that in place in their business had an easier transition than those companies that have sort of like build it from scratch, that hadn't been in the position to make that happen. So the opportunity to really sort of serve that market need as well as be in that space are going to be important. So platforms like being able to sell on large platforms like Amazon are going to continually be incredibly important, as well as being able to sort of engage with folks and sort of like personal shoppers or delivery sort of door to door are going to be important. Now, where I see the failings taking place are in those business models that sort of relied very deeply on consumer or business spending. We're going to see sort of a lot of uncertainty in that space for the next 6 to 12 months. And so it's really important for folks to really critically examine what that sort of looks like. On the luxury brand side, on the sort of, budget side, at every level, is going to be important to sort of understand sort of what's in that space.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, I don't want it to be just me. If anyone else has questions, feel free to jump in. Or if you want, you could type them into the chat. And so while y'all are thinking about that, I'll just kind of ask an interim question. So really, where do you think the economy, this may be a super broad question, right? But where do you think that we'll be as a business community in the next 6 months to a year? I mean, do you think that there's probably going to end up being a lot of closures? And I mean, it's probably maybe more apparent day by day, but and then, what do you think will come out of the fire? Will there be a lot of saturation in certain areas? If that makes sense.
It's going to be really hard because we've got sort of a triple sort of black swan event, right? We've got the sort of real health concerns and social distancing that we have brought about by the actual illness of COVID-19. We've got the recession itself that's due to the sort of transition that we've had in the last 4 weeks. And then we've had the sort of collapse of oil prices and energy. And so my prediction is that we're in for a really rough 6 months to a really rough year. Those companies that have got the resources and the reserves to be able to sustain their operations, to be able to find a way to move their business forward are going to last. The guy who's sort of leaf blowing that you can hear over here, next door, his business is going to be probably okay. He's still servicing his customers. So how is it that we've got these businesses that are going to be able to be resilient over the next sort of 12 months to be able to sort of work on this? But it's going to be a very, very difficult 6 to 12 months in the business community. We're also going to find a tremendous amount of need in the nonprofit space as individuals sort of are tapped and are seeking additional services as well.
Okay. Awesome.
This is Daniela. I wanted to know if, because you've mentored so many classes of entrepreneurs, maybe going through the program at Trinity and even from Breakfast and Launch and other kind of San Antonio startup scene, have anybody reached out to you and what advice are they seeking, or what are you telling them like to push forward right now? Like I'm just wondering about like what questions are you getting from startups or people that maybe have a few years of starting out, and what are you advising them with?
So some of the questions I've got, I sort of alluded to. My apologies. It appears we've got someone next door who's got a leaf blower on, so I hope you can hear me over the noise. Some of the questions I've been having have been similar to the questions that we had on our call today. What can I do to keep my business moving forward? What are the, can you help me through this sort of laundry list of real difficult choices I've got to be making? Or I'm thinking about making these kind of very difficult choices. I'd love your perspective on another pair of eyes about whether or not these, choices between bad and worse are really sort of the choices that I have moving forward. We're getting a lot of questions like that. We're getting lots of questions on other resources that people can sort of tap into. And we've been referring to folks, obviously, to the SBA. We've been referring to people to Lift Fund. The great work that's been happening with Launch SA and the partners there have been incredible. We're referring to people to go to those places as well. We've also had a number of questions as well from folks about sort of less sort of crisis mode and more strategic long-term mode about what can they do to take advantage of sort of this changing world. What can people do to take advantage of the opportunities that exist in work from home? What is it that people can take advantage of with regards to sort of some assets they may have had that they didn't get a chance to sort of utilize in the before time that now they're going to have to sort of pivot and utilize in a different way? We're getting those kinds of questions as well. I believe there was a question as well from Michelle. She asks, do you think on average people are more productive at home versus in the office with long meetings? And do you see business recognizing that and offering more telecommuting? Michelle, thank you so much for your question. I think certainly in my own experience and the experience that I'm having and engaging with folks around the city and around the world has been that it varies. Some people are finding that working from home during this time is sort of their peak zone. They're usually individuals that are single, that don't have younger kids. They might be individuals that may be already sort of empty nesters. They're finding this to be sort of an optimal time of sort of working at home because they're more focused. They don't have the distraction of what's happening at work. And they're finding this to be an exceptional sort of time of creativity and of really digging deep and doing really hard work. Then there's a whole bunch of other folks, myself included, that find that the balance of working at home with family members, with kids, concern about elder parents, concern about families and friends, the productivity at actually home is decreased. But I actually think that this is a function of this moment as opposed to sort of telecommunication and telework moving forward. I do think that this will allow employers to be better at being able to be and to adjust their workforce to embrace telecommuting and telework. I think many sort of employers are surprised at how productive things have gone moving forward and are excited about that opportunity.
I'm curious because just as an example, my cousin who works and lives in London works for a company, and it's very common overseas. I don't know that it's more common in the United States of what do they call it? Not work sharing, but space sharing. And you don't have a dedicated desk, and so the companies have decided to save money from building offices and building cubicles, and they have half of the workforce telecommuting. And when you do come in, you just kind of grab an open seat, and it's not yours, so you can't like put family pictures up or anything. And I wonder if all of this folks working from home will bring that about, because to me, I feel like there's a cost savings on a business side, not just in furniture and everything else that it takes to set up an office, but utilities as well, if you don't have that many warm bodies in an office. Anyway, it's just an observation. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I think it's going to be a mix. I think there are some advantages that some companies will take in this sort of work from home moment that they're going to carry forward in their business. I agree with you. I think that there are some cost savings, but it's really highly industry and company dependent about whether or not those cost savings are going to be actually translated across the board. So every sort of founder, every entrepreneur needs to think critically about whether or not those cost savings are really going to be realized or not. It is clear that for some companies and some industries, the ability to do this telecommuting and work from home is actually, they're finding themselves to be just as productive, or with the sort of crisis, maybe they're at 80% when they could be at 100, and they're looking to find ways to make that happen. But what I think is really important is the ability for people to sort of randomly bump into each other, the kinds of conversations that happen in that sort of like peeking in on someone's office and say, hey, I was looking and working on XYZ, and can I bounce this idea off of you? Finding ways in which companies that are embracing telework to be able to ensure that those kinds of interactions take place are also going to be critical.
Right. What I do, aside from working at Key Co-working, as a voice actor, one of the downsides of being a voice actor in the greater San Antonio area, especially in animation, is the expectation that you have to be close to a local studio in LA. And they've been very, very clear about that. You got to live in LA. And now, of course, the studios are all closed. And my hope is that they recognize that they can use a technology like Source Connect or IPDTL and cast across the country and do that. I'm holding out hope that because of this, they will not go back to the norm that, okay, we've opened up our studios and we're only going to have the talent that's in Burbank or the talent that's in New York. But that's a very personal sort of dynamic that, and I don't know if that translates into other small businesses that they've seen work increase because of this, and they kind of don't want it to go back to a new normal because their business model has changed so much.
So what we're seeing is, so if I can extrapolate your experience to some other industries, we are seeing sort of across the board, there are a number of businesses that actually are changing their business model. And as you mentioned, sort of as a voice actor, I mean, there's great opportunities now to be able to sort of access talent that's remote, not necessarily in your own local area, through the availability and the use of these kinds of tools. So I'm as optimistic as you are. I think that in that particular industry, we're going to see some changes of being able to sort of have national rosters of professional voice actors that aren't necessarily located in Burbank and Los Angeles or New York. And I think that kind of model is going to be true for other kinds of remote knowledge-based industries. I also know that because of the kinds of changes that are happening with regards to the changes in workforce, people who may have been sort of hyper-focused on serving a local market are now able to sort of access a more national or global market to sort of serve their customers in ways that perhaps they may not have thought otherwise. So perhaps you might be based in San Antonio and you were servicing clients in South Texas, but now with sort of the crisis, your ability to then think about doing that same kind of level of service to folks in Wichita and Tampa and folks in Chicago, the ability for companies to be able to pivot and service customers in different locales are going to be an important aspect of this moving forward. In fact, this moment actually has been built for these kinds of remote back office or remote sort of front office kinds of business models. And so the ability for businesses to sort of adopt to this new reality, to embrace that, are going to be something that I think is exciting sort of moving forward. That also being said, on the flip side, there is still the need for something local. And so we're seeing as well the emergence of businesses that are serving sort of a hyper-local sort of clientele, because of the fact that, well, if I'm going to get this thing, it's going to be shipped, it's going to take me 6 weeks. Well, like, I can do this for you right now and you can have it in 3 days, right? Like that ability to be able to do that sourcing. So I'm seeing sort of a bifurcated sort of model. We're having some sort of embracing the sort of distance work and others looking at hyper-local.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Hi, Luis. This is Andrea from Moya Express Cafe. What will be your advice for someone that is thinking to release like new products? And do you think that's a good idea? Because I'm thinking the products that I have to like in plan to release in future, I'm kind of rushing and accelerating that to make it happen, you know, to develop and release beforehand. So what do you think about it?
I think this might be an interesting time to really dig in deep to see what those new product servicings are, and then to find really tightly calibrated, focused ways in which you can think about introducing these new products and getting some sort of sense about what that traction is. The challenge, though, is like, where is the demand going to be for those new products? So this would be a time to build that demand, right? Because people aren't having access to that particular kind of product. Now's an opportunity to sort of let people know that that exists, and now we want to be able to offer that. And so this might be a great time for product innovation and product servicings. But the important thing is, this is going to be different for every business. Like, how can you sustain that new product offering? Are those resources that you're spending in developing new product offerings best used developing those new product offerings, the revenues that come from that? Or are those resources best spent keeping your business alive to be able to continue to service the customers that you have right now? And that's an individual question that each entrepreneur can answer. So I can't speak exactly of whether or not it's the best time or the worst time. What I will say is your individual mileage may vary. So if you are planning on introducing new products, think about sort of real focused experiments or ways in which you can find the real traction and value you're creating for your customers with those new products. So if you've thought through about who the potential customers are, being in the process of engaging with them, have a sense about what their willingness to pay is, have a sense about what is it that product needs to be provided for them, what qualities are they looking for that product. This might be an optimal time to be working and co-creating that new product offering with these initial customer bases, so then when things begin to turn around in 6 months to a year to 18 months, with those relationships, you've built that level of initial traction, and then are able then at that point to just think about scaling.
Right. Thank you.
Luis, I want to kind of tag on to that a little bit. I'm really curious. So normally, especially for food folks, we would really push the idea of trying to test in a farmer's market, but obviously that's in an in-person environment right now. So, is there such a thing as a digital farmer's market? How do you imagine testing something without there he goes again. No sweat. He may or may not come back on. Well, I was just curious how you would test on an online environment. So maybe any of y'all have questions on that or thoughts?
Yeah, that was actually something that I was thinking of, talking about the new products, that the easy way to taste my products is obviously in person, like physically.
Right.
So that's why I'm like kind of evaluating the decision that I'm taking right now to releasing new products. So yeah, I've been thinking about it.
That's super. Yeah, I don't know. It's a really hard question, especially with food, right? Because it's really so dependent on the taste. It's really rare that you would buy something so frequently without having tasted it, unless you've heard about it through someone else. So I don't know. That's like, I don't know. I'm curious how you would imagine that. So.
We need like word of mouth, I guess, more than anything right now.
You know what? I kind of have an idea for it that might be useful for you. So this could be the opportunity for you to utilize the influencers, if you will, or send your products to people that do reviews on like YouTube and stuff like that, as a way for them to see. Yeah, because if they can kind of give that real-time reaction of, oh man, this is really good, or this is how I feel about it, then you can use those as your testing point.
Yes, that's genius. I like that idea. Yeah. Or even like local local chefs or local people that is like in the industry, or
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, no problem. That's I think that's a good way you get that extension forward. So
Yep.
cool. Dig it.
Thank you.
Yeah, no sweat. So I know that we were scheduled to go till 11:30. I don't know that Luis. I'm not sure if Luis will jump back on, but if we're able to get him, then we'll probably have him just kind of close up real quick. And so let me see if he'll be able to just do that part. And I just want to reemphasize, I appreciate all of you guys being on today and asking for support or just questions.
Thank you. It was great to have Luis and having all his perspective and like things that he knows already. So that's good. Thank you.
Awesome. Oh, there he is again. Cool. Great. He's back.
My apologies for coming off. My computer overheated now the second time.
Oh, no problem. I was just saying that I know that this was originally scheduled till 11:30. So in the interest of time and everything like that, if I'd love to know if you have any sort of remaining words or leaving thoughts or ideas of encouragement or what have you.
Sure. A couple of things for encouragement. One, you're not alone. Everyone is going through this together. And so this is a time, I think, for founders and for entrepreneurs to reach out towards each other, to sort of form community, to engage with each other, to sort of seek out not only help, but also ways in which we can sort of work together. I think the kinds of ties that bind us before can be strengthened during this time. And I think it's important for us to reach out to each other as a community. Second, I think it's important for us to be forgiving with our customers, with our team, with our partners. We're all going through a tremendous amount of stress. We're all going through a tremendous amount of anxiety. The ability for us to provide each other some grace or to sort of receive others' graces during this time is going to be very important. Third, if there has been anything during this time that you have to do, you have to critically examine every assumption it is that you've made about your business. If it hasn't happened already, start doing it now. If you've already been doing it, know that you're going to be reassessing those assessments every 3 months, every 6 months, as this dynamic changes, as material and the facts on the ground changes. You need to be in that constant sort of thinking about what is true now, what will be true in the future, what is no longer true, and how can we sort of embrace this sort of fact of what's happening moving forward. Fourth, is that there are great resources like Launch SA. There are great programs like Break Fast and Launch that exist, organizations and partners like Lift Fund, the SBA that are here to help and support us. That level of engagement that takes place now during the moment of a crisis doesn't mean it's the only time that we engage with these individuals in these programs. And so it's important to understand that as well as it's time for us to take a penny, it'll be time for us at some moment in the future to give a penny for these incredible programs and people who reached out for support. And finally, two other things that are important. One, take this moment now to reach out to your customers, to reach out to your stakeholders. The level of communication you're going to have with them is going to be different, and it's important to recognize that reality. But please, like, reconnect with your customers, reconnect with your stakeholders. It's important to let them know that you're there with them. Important to let them know that you're still there. and that you want to be of help and you want to be of service. And then finally, it's really important to sort of recognize the importance of your team, of your family, and re-engage with them. Let them know that they're valued, let them know that their contributions are really valued and very important, and find ways of sort of looking at this opportunity to bring you all closer together. So then when we sort of come out on the other side of this, and I think that I'm very optimistic about what will happen on the other side, that when we're on the other side of this, we're more prepared, we're stronger as a community, we're stronger as a team to be able to sort of embrace the challenges of what that new future will look like.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Luis. I really appreciate you providing
Thank you very much.
perspective. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you
Great
so much. And
meeting you.
again, is there a way for anybody that wants to contact you, or?
Sure. So I'm available. People can find me on Twitter at TU Luis Martinez on Twitter. I'm also on LinkedIn, and my email is lmartin6@trinity.edu. That's lmartin6@trinity.edu.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day, Luis.
Thank you so much, Ryan. I really appreciate it.